Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the part 2 of our JavaScript crash course. In this video, we are going to cover arrays and array methods, object literals, object methods, array of objects, loops, and ES6 higher order array methods. If you have missed the part 1, then I recommend you to watch that first. You just click on the card above and jump to the part 1 directly. If you are new, then please check out my other crash courses. I will add the links in the description below. Also, make sure you subscribe my channel and press the bell icon so that you don't miss the upcoming JavaScript crash course videos like this one. So let's get started. So let's see how we can declare the array. So let me have a variable. I'm going to give a name as frameworks, and I'm going to have Angular. Then I'm going to have React. So these are the JavaScript frameworks and Vue. Okay. And I will going to create one more way. So this is one of the way of creating arrays and declaring arrays and assigning values. The other way you can do is let me have databases, and you can use the constructor object with new keyword, new array, and then you can assign the values. I will assign the value db2, and I'm going to give MongoDB. All right, so now next thing we will see how we can access the elements. So if you want to access the element from the array, you can access it using the index. So I'm going to do framework, and I need to have a value of 0th index. So it's going to give me an Angular. So similarly, I can do it too. And if I write something which is not present in the array, it's going to give me an undefined because it's not there in the array. And if I remove it, I want to just log the complete array, then it's going to give me a complete array with indexes and lengths. If I want to change the value of the 0th index, then I can do like database of 0th, and I can change it to Oracle. And if I save it, and now let's do the console log of databases, then it's going to give me an Oracle. Okay, so we see that how we can declare the arrays, how we can access the values. The next thing we can see that what are the array methods available that we can use. Right, so I'm going to do a console dot log, and I'm going to have I need to find the length of my array. So let me add the length. So I can get 3 as the length of the array. I can also use, if I want to sort the values of the array, I can use sort method. And when I use sort method, you can see that now it is sorted alphabetically. So if similarly I can do it for databases, then it's going to have a MongoDB, Oracle, and SQL. All right, so next we will see that if we want to remove an element from the array, we can use it pop, and then pop will remove the element from the last. So now if I want to see the databases, what will be the values? The database will have only MongoDB and Oracle, because when you use pop method, it's going to remove the last element. Now, if I want to remove the MongoDB, which is the first element, so if you want to remove the first element, a database dot shift, and you save it. So now if I print the console log again here, you will see that now the first element, which was MongoDB, is now removed. Similarly, if you want to add an element then at the last, then you use push. So let me add an element. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to add a push here. And in the database, I want to push Cassandra, which is a database. And now if I add it, you can see that There was earlier it was MongoDB Oracle, and now Cassandra is the new one added to the array. And if you want to add at the first index, then instead of push, you can do unshift postgre. So unshift will add the element at the 0th index. All right. So one thing I want to show in array is if you want to check the type of array, then if I do type of frameworks, then it's not going to give me an array. It's always going to give me an object, because arrays and objects, they are primitive data types and they are always treated as object. But if you actually want to see whether it's an array or not, there is another way of checking that. So I'll show you what is that way. So what I'm going to do, you can use array, and then you can use is array, and then you can pass the value, and this is going to give me true. Yes, it is an array. So this is one of the way of checking the array. And the other way you can do is let me add a console.log. In the console.log you can always check the instance of. So framework is an instance of array, then it's going to give me a true. Yes, framework, it is an instance of array. All right. So the next thing we are going to see is the objects in JavaScript. Okay, and how you can declare an object in JavaScript? It's very simple. You just declare a object literal. So this is how you declare an object. Simple. So now this is the object in JavaScript. This is an empty object. You can add properties and methods to this object. So let me add. So if I want to have a console.log and employee, it's going to give me an empty. And if I check the type of, it's going to give me an object. So it is an object. Now let's add the properties in this object. So this is an employee object. So an employee will have an employee ID. Then the employee will have the first name. I'm going to give the page. The employee will have last name. I'm going to give Malvia. The employee will have age. I'm going to give 29. Then the employee is going to have a date of joining. I'm going to give 2010 2019. All right, I'll just make this a string. And you can also have the employee is going to have an address. So an address, it's again an object inside an object, and the city will be Makati, and the country will be Philippines, and I'm going to have a skills which will be an array. So this employee has skill of HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Sorry, I just need to add the colon here. All right. So this is the object and I have created a little bit bigger and complex object with different types in it. So there is a simple properties in it, and there is an object which is an address inside an object, and there is a array which is inside an object, which is skill. So now if I print this object, then I can see the complete object here. Okay, now let's see how actually you can access the object properties. So let's access the properties. The simple one is I'm going to write is that employee.id. Employee.id is going to give me an ID. So similarly, if I want to have so you can see now I get all the properties on my employees here. So if I write I want to have an address, then it's going to give me another object But if I want to access the city of the employee, then I'm going to add a dot and I'm going to add a city. And this is going to give me the city. If I want to access the skills of the employee, then I can access skills and it's going to give me an array. And if I want to have the first index, then I can add an index here and I can get CSS. So this is where you can access the values. Apart from the properties, you can also have methods in your objects. So let me add a method in my object. I'm going to add a full name as a method. And this method is going to return me. I'm going to use string literal again. Okay, and now, so now I have the first name and last name. And now if I want to access the method, I'm going to add full name. Now you can see that when I actually trying to access the full name, just wrote employee dot full name. The similar way I was accessing the properties like employee dot address, employee dot skills, employee dot first name. But when I write employee dot full name, it's going to return me a function, but I don't want the function. I want the values. So you need to have a parenthesis here. If I save now, it says that reference error, first name is not defined at object dot full name. And why is it so? We have first name in the object, and this is because if this is a function and the values you are trying to access inside the function is the first name and the last name, but there is no direct reference. You cannot access the values directly. You need to add this keyword. And when you add this keyword, and if I save it, I get the values. So this keyword here is actually referencing the employee itself. And if you want to see that, I can do a console.log here and I can write this and I can save. If I write this, and it's give me the complete object, and our object which is the employee itself. That is why I have to write this keyword here if I want to access the properties. So this keyword has different behaviors. So let me talk a little bit about the this keyword. So if I write a this keyword here, console.log, and this, then you will see, and I save it. So you can see that on line number 21, which is console log this, giving me a window object. But if I do the same thing on the line number 16, it's giving me the object itself. So this keyword will always be referenced to its callee. Like when we call this keyword on the line number 21, we are calling it on the script file itself, which is the by default the topmost parent is the window object. So here we are calling it on the window object. But in this, you can see the full name, and in this case, when you call the full name, this method is called. And when this method is called, you get this line is executed. And in this case, this will be referencing to the callee. And the callee of this method is the employee itself. So in this way, this keyword is referencing to the employee. So this keyword has a different behaviors. If you directly write this keyword, then so if I write this keyword here itself, then it's going to have an window object, because now the callee is the window itself. So it is going to reference to the window. But in this case, when I called employee.fullname, the callee of this full name method was employee. So it is referencing to the employee. I don't need to confuse you much about this keyword, but for now, you can always keep in mind that this keyword will always reference or always point to the callee of the function. All right, so there is another way of accessing the methods, and that way is the destructuring. So let me show you the ES6 destructuring. So what I'm going to do is in destructuring, you can create a variable and then in the parenthesis you can you can pick the values from the employee object. So if I want to pick the first name and age, what I'm going to do, I'm going to pick first name and I'm going to pick age. All right, and I'm picking those from the employee object. So I'm going to give an employee here. All right, and now if I console dot log the first name, it's going to give me the page. And if I console log age, it's going to give me an age. So this is called destructuring, and it's very useful when actually you work with the React framework. Now let me show you one thing. We will have an array of objects. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create an array of employees. All right, so this will be an array of employees. And now I'm going to have this object and I will add the object here. And now we don't want so many things. We only need few things. So this is one object. Let me create another object. Change this to Amit and I'm changing this to Dubey. All right, and let's the age is 35 and I'm going to give her age as 25. All right, so now we have an array of objects, and this is the actual a replica, or you can say in real life when you actually build projects, you are going to receive a data always be in a form of array of objects. Like this can be an array of books, or this can be an array of people or person, or this can be an array of cars, and then you pick the values and you display it on your HTML. So how you can access this? So if you want to access this, you can have console log. Let me first print all the employees. So all the employees. So now you can see that each of the element is an object. So if I want to access the first object, then I'm going to write index 0, and this is going to give me the first object. Now if I want to access the second object, then it's going to give me the second object. And if you need to access the values, then you can write dot, and with the dot you can access the values further. Right, you can access age. So this way you can add access further. So if this had an address as well, it was an object, and I had a city of Makati, and I had a skills, and on the skills I will write HTML. So now if you wanted to access the skills, then what you will do, you need to have an employees, you will have the second object, and then you're going to have skills, and you wanted to have the first object in skills, so you can object it and you will get HTML. So it's very easy. I mean, you need to trace to the element which you want to access, and usually you trace it with the dot in between. So if I wanted to have an address, okay, and I wanted to have a city, I will go and I will add dot, and I'm going to traverse it till the property I want to access. So actually, when in real projects, when you want to send data to the backend server, you actually have to send it in the form of JSON. So JSON is a way of communicating from a front end to the backend, and backend to the front end. So the data transfer is in the form of a JSON objects. So this is a JavaScript object. You cannot send the JavaScript object directly to the server, so you need to pingify this. And how we can convert this to a JSON object, so I'm going to do a constant, and I'm going to show you employees JSON, and I will have a JSON dot stringify, and then I'm going to add my employees here. All right, and now let's print this constant. So I'm going to do a console.log and I'm going to add employees JSON and I'll save it. So this is the actual JSON. All right, so what I'm going to do now, if we want to see this JSON, then I will click here and I'll just add this JSON, and now you can see that this is the JSON object which you actually send to the server. So this is when you actually send it from your front end to the server, but when you actually receive the response back from the server, which will be in this form, in that case, you actually need to convert it back to an array of objects. And how you can do that? So that you can do, you can write constant emp array, okay, and now JSON dot parse, and now I'm going to parse this employee JSON, okay. And now I'm going to console log this so that you can see the difference of JSON stringify and JSON parse. So now you can see, now this is I am back to my JavaScript array of objects using the JSON parse. So when you send the data to the server, you need to stringify your array of objects and convert it to a JSON string, and then you send it. And when you receive the JSON string, you parse it, and then you get back your array of objects. So this is the idea behind showing you the array of objects, because when actually you build projects, you will be dealing with this. All right, so the next thing I want to show you are the loops in JavaScript, how you can use loops in JavaScript. So JavaScript also have a similar loops like the other languages have. You can use for loop, you can use while loop. So let me show you how you can use for loop, and I'll just remove this. And the first one we can use is the for loop. So I'm going to do for let I is equals to 0. So I want my loop should start from 0, and I want my I length. So let me have the employee length, okay, and I plus plus. All right. So I'm going to loop through all the first name. So what I'm going to do, I will write console.log. We'll have the employees of I dot first name. And now it's going to loop through all the first names. Similarly, if I want to have an age, I can have an age as well. So was a simple for loop, and you can also do this the same thing using while loop. So let me have a while loop here, 0, and you add a while. This j should be less than your employee's length, okay. And then you can have console.log, and you can have employees of j, and you can have j plus plus, and you will get both your objects. So if from the object, if I only want the ID of the employees, then it's going to give me only the IDs. There is one more, which is the for of loop. And to use the for of loop, you can have a for, okay, and you will have a let variable employee of employees. And now the each employee is actually the each object of the employees array. So if I going to do a console.log, so now it's going to give me both the objects. So it's going to, the loop will go on until it gets all the objects of my employees. So you can now, if you want to have the first name, then you can directly use the first names. It's going to give me the first name. Other than this, we also have some higher order array methods which are from the ES6. So let's take a look on the ES6 array methods. So I will just comment this out and I'm going to add from here. All right. So the first one is the for each loop. So let's see how we can use the for each loop. So I'm going to have an employees dot for each, and inside the for each I will have a function. I will have an employee, an individual employee, and then I can use console.log, and I want to have each employee's last name. All right, and I'll save it. So now you can see that using for each, we can actually loop through all the employees and get the access to the values. So this was for each. For each. The other one I want to show is the map. So using map, map will loop through all the employees, and it's going to pick one of the employees, and then you can manipulate the data of that employee, and it's going to return you a new array. So how I can do that? From this employee object, I need to have an array of first names. So if I want to have array of first names, what I'm going to do, I will have a constant, and I'm going to have names and employees dot map, and I'm going to have a function here, employee, and then it can return me the employee dot first name. And now let me print this console.log names. So the names will give me now the array of the names, and I can see that I got undefined, and that is because I am accessing employees, but actually I wanted to access employee emp, right? So now you can see we get the page and the cache. So this is the map, and the third one I want to show you is the filter. You can also filter it, and let me show you how you can filter it. So I'm going to have a constant employee, okay, and what I want is I want from the employees I will do a filter. Okay, I will have, so all have a very similar way of writing. You need to have an inner function, and then you have, so I'm going to return an employee dot ID is equals to 101, and I'll save it. And now let's console this. So I will do a console.log, and I'm going to have an employee. Sorry, this should be double equals to. So when I do employees, now you can see that from the employees array, I have filtered out some of the employees based on the criteria. All right. The best thing is you can also do chaining of it. So if I do a chaining, so what I get the output of this, I'm going to have a map on it. And in the map, I'm going to have one more function, and I'm going to have an emp, and I want all the names of those employees which match with the criteria. So here I'm going to return the emp dot first name. All right, and now you will see that I have did a chaining of these higher order array methods. I did a filter first, and then I applied a map on it. All right, guys, so we will take a break here, and we'll see you in the part 3 of our JavaScript crash course. But before you go, don't forget to subscribe the channel and press the bell icon so that you don't miss the upcoming videos. Also, you can connect with me via Facebook or Instagram. You can find the links in the description below. Thanks for watching.